have to enter the war. There is one battle, one naval battle where they're actually shooting at each other. It's called the Battle of Jutland. Not really important. It's off of Jutland, which is Denmark and Germany right here. Remember Holstein and Schleswig. But these are the pictures of it. These are really cool. You've got these are huge, long monsters. And the picture that you've got here is a ship that is being sunk, and this is taken from the bow of one of the U-boats. One of the boats that is sunk is called the Lusitania. And I'm sure you've heard of this boat at some point. Now, I'm going to say this 300,016 times. The Lusitania did not result in the United States declaring war against Germany. By the way, notice, I put it in this big bowl, it's in caps, does not. If you put it on your test as it causes the U.S. to enter, I swear I'm going to write you a nasty note.
Can I do it just like in the nasty note?
I'm going to write you one heck of a... It does not cause it. I'm going to take off points and I'm going to say not. But,
would it be one of the reasons?
No.
Okay.
You're gonna use the term the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare so that you can differentiate between it. This does not bring it in. It brings us to the brink of war. But when they resume it finally, that's when the U.S. is going to come in.
It wasn't the fact that they sent that one.
It's not this one.
Continued.
They continue. And you know what? President Wilson, okay, now, almost 1,200 people were killed. About 130, 120, 130 were Americans. And that's horrible. And President Wilson demands, gets up in the German's face and demands an apology. And money. And really doesn't do anything. And makes the Germans promise you will never, ever, ever, ever do it again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we won't do it again.
No, we won't do it again. You know. Yeah.
Weren't Americans also told, hey, you shouldn't be sailing those boats?
Yeah, the U.S. was warned. The Germans actually put an ad in the New York Times and several newspapers saying, hey, by the way, we're going to bomb you if you get on these boats. So stay off the boats. And the Lusitania was specifically targeted.
Wasn't I also under assumption that the Lusitania was like holding arms and stuff, bringing it into the war?
Well, the Americans and the Brits said that, oh, absolutely, we never, ever, ever put arms on our passenger ships.
Yeah, so it was like we won't ever do it, but it was.
They found the wreckage, and there's arms stored in its hold. It's like the Spanish Main. It's always, there's always a second side to that. So they were carrying arms, and it would have been a perfect example of a reason to sink the ship, but it would have been nice if they'd not sunk a passenger ship.
And
but
also they didn't know that there were for certain arms.
They might have. There's a possibility that they had an inkling. The political cartoons come out and show exactly why the mean President Wilson, he was so harsh on the Germans. This is the view of many Americans who were calling for war at this time, because we don't go to war at this point, right? No. It's going to take a couple more years. His backbone has been lost because he doesn't stand up to the Germans. He just asked for an apology. And then here you see the American war dog, a jingoist, is like somebody who's calling for war. And Wilson, and you can't miss his face and his glasses. The dude has, I think it's a PhD in, I think it's political science or history, one of the two. I don't remember which one it is standing in hiding from those crying for war. Okay, so he's asked for an apology, and Germany's promised, okay, we won't do this again, because they realize if they bring the U.S. in, they're in trouble. And they stop unrestricted submarine warfare until the Sussex, which is another passenger ferry that's running in between France and England in the Channel, and is torpedoed, and about 50 people are killed. None of them are Americans. Brings us to the brink of war, and President Wilson shows his muscles and says, you have to give us an apology, and promise never, ever, ever to do it again. It is, but the thing is the United States was not ready to be part of this war. We were still isolationist, and we were trying to stay out of it, but we wanted to benefit from it because we're sending lots of ships over there making lots of money. So the Germans signed the Sussex Pledge, They agree that they are not going to blow up passenger ships, and they're going to stop unrestricted submarine warfare. That is until February.
That's not
That's
too long.
what brings in, this is when the U.S. is going to enter. It is not the Lusitania, hello, not the Lusitania,
So
not
who's
the
Lusitania?
Sussex.
Got it.
Yeah, every year somebody does it, drives me crazy. And they're here, they're sitting in class, and I'm like doing the, you know, hey, don't say this stupid, dum-dum. I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stick a dum-dum on your paper, and I'm gonna wave it around so everybody knows.
Stabbed
Yeah,
right
yes,
through it.
right through the middle of it. This is the political cartoon after the Sussex. This is the calls for war.
Let's draw the coke.
Yeah, and it's not. So in the end, what is going to happen with this blockade is the Germans are going to starve. They're not going to have the necessary things to survive and to fight a war. The numbers vary on the deaths. It depends on which resource or which source that you quote. I usually use about 750,000. If you talk to the Germans, it's 800,000. If you talk to the Americans and the Brits, it's like 500,000. You know, and it's okay. But realize that the U.S. is going to supply both sides, and so they're going to play both sides of this until the U-boat is starting to be used against them. That's going to alienate them, and then it's kind of like pushing and you know, like somebody's picking on you. He can pick and pick and pick. It's like kid in the back. You know, you guys are sitting here with my daughter. She's still mad at me because I was picking on her. You know, she keeps kicking the back of your chair. She keeps kicking the back of the chair, and at some point you're going to turn around, and it's not these two. Okay. Now, the Western Front. Pretty much everything stalls. So there are a series of battles that are going to be fought over inches. We are talking this 6,000-mile mess of trenches. One of the interesting things that comes out of this is this little private that's running around as a messenger in the trenches of the Germans. He had left Austria, where he was starving pretty much because he couldn't get a job, and he was failing as an artist because he sucked. And he was running messages. He volunteered for the army. He actually had to leave Austria because he didn't want to fight with Austrians. And he moved, he went to Bavaria, and he joined the Bavarian contingent of the German army. He is injured in a mortar shell attack, has some shrapnel in his leg. He chooses to go back to the front. He wins 2 Iron Crosses, which is like the equivalent of the, yeah, it's like the Medal of Honor, the U.S. Medal of Honor. And there's 2 levels of them. He gets one that's a 2nd degree and one that's a 1st degree. Supposedly in that first mortar attack, he loses a testicle. So, yeah, your head just went, what? And so the Americans would sing songs about how Hitler only had 1 ball, and you know, it's hilarious. I had a U.S. history teacher that actually sung the songs. I don't know them personally, I didn't learn them, but here's this like 75-year-old woman who is, you know, has been at this school that I went to forever, and she is singing a story about Hitler having 1 testicle, and I'm on the floor rolling around laughing, and you know, you remember these things. So he gets injured the first time by a mortar shell. Second time he is injured, it's in a gas attack, and it is at the tail end of the war. He is actually in hospital when recovering from the burns that he had received when the armistice is signed. And supposedly he is heartbroken because he hoped for the Germans to take over the world and, you know, be like him. One of the reasons they think that his voice is, if you've ever listened to him, he's got a really high voice when he speaks loudly, and it rises and rises in pitch. It's not just volume. It gets very, very high, and it's not very common for men to be able to do that. Most of the time when you get loud, you go lower. They think that when he was burned by the gas, that affected his larynx. So this is where he's going to get his start. And one of the reasons why he is so upset at the end of the war is because as they are tearing apart the army, he loses his job once again. And he is used in the interwar period right at the beginning to spy on the communists. So he's part of this. We're gonna see new weapons that are going to be used. They're not going to be large, they're not gonna have a big impact. They're gonna be more psychological, in this case, like the tank. But it's the first time that we're really gonna see it used in battle. The Battle of the Somme, we see the first tank, and these tanks went through all different types of designs. I mean, these are actually kind of funny. They put like, you know, here's a car, let's put a tank around it. This is a Renault, which is a French car company now. And this looks pretty similar. This thing, this looks like a toy my kids would design out of Legos. I mean, just weird looking. Some of them worked and some of them didn't. Most of the time they didn't work though. They were not reliable. It is not going to be like those great tank battles that you got in North Africa during World War II. If you like tanks, it's World War II that you see this, but this is the infancy of it. They're used in some cases to break through trenches. They're used to break through these big hedgerows, the big hedges in between fields in northern France that had been there for generations. But they're not really going to have that big of an impact on the war itself. It's going to be the first time though. One of the new weapons of war, like we said, is going to be gas. We're going to use chemical warfare really for the first time. And actually it's the French that use it first. Right at the outbreak of war. They use irritants though. It's the Germans who are going to use the deadly stuff to start with. Chlorine gas is used at Ypres, I don't remember to say it right. The British made fun of the name of this Belgian town by calling it Wipers. If you look at the way it's spelled, it's Ypres. You're going to see the use of mustard gas, and the soldier that you see here has got these boils in places where he has come into contact with the mustard gas. And guys, there is no use, any type of use for mustard gas other than to kill people.